Hello! Today we'll be looking at something genuinely quite exciting. It is the FatShark Bytefrost and comes in this box. But just before we get in that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you don't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find it, don't forget to click the bell icon which will tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So, this is the long-awaited FatShark Bytefrost. It's digital HD FPV system. It was going to come out and then DJI brought out their digital system and the launch got delayed a little while because FatShark wanted to go back and address a couple of things, because I think it thought that the distance between its initial system and DJI was very large, and here it is now. I should say this wasn't supplied for review by your normal people. This didn't come from Banggood or FatShark or any company like that. It came from a friend called Rob Thompson. Rob, you may have seen on this channel once or twice. He helped develop the Skyhook glider. Here's a quick clip and showing what it looks like. Little bit ill-fated. I've still got it in a box down here ready, and the repair kit ready to fix again. It's on my long list of things to do. But he has his own channel. It's a link to it just over here, and he reviewed it, and he wanted me to have a look at it as well, as he was running out of some time, and he wanted to know my thoughts on it. So yeah, it's not mine. I can't abuse it to death. Obviously I'll be very, very careful, because after I check it out for a couple of weeks I need to send it back to Rob so he can carry on playing with it. But let's find out what's in there. Now, these have been released, but they're not sort of everywhere. At the moment, limited quantities. Rob got it from Get FPV, which is, I think, an American-based site. They've still got some left there. I don't know if they're available anywhere else at the moment, but this is what it looks like. It is a big box. Inside the box, aside from this sheet, you get this stuff, and here's why it is a big box. So this isn't a module or anything. It is essentially this screen and DVR recorder, which is essentially your VRX, your DVR, your way you're getting the picture from here into your goggles by means of an HDMI cable. So there is normal stuff here. There's a channel button, a menu button. You've got the 4 antennas, HDMI out, DC in, USB-C, a tripod adapter there, and this bit here where you can put the battery. Battery wise, you've got this. This is an empty shell. Basically you can put two 18650s in the back of this, much like I think they do a similar thing for the FatShark goggles now, and basically plug that in and it will also sit in the back like that, so you don't have to have a battery dangling around. Now the more interesting bits is the actual Bytefrost VTX itself, which looks like this. Now I haven't had the DJI goggles and whole system, but one thing I noted about it, the air unit was quite large, and it did more things. It recorded and stuff as well. But if you look at the Bytefrost, the interesting thing about it, I think, is it is like a single stacked board. It's, I guess, slightly thicker than a normal VTX, but you've got a regular MMCX adapter, you've got all the normal sort of power things, and if you look at the camera that goes with it, this is a RunCam camera. It looks almost identical to your regular RunCam style cameras. There's just a few more little connectors on the back which will plug into this. Now the good thing going about this, I think, is that I should be able to put this on a regular quad. Basically just swap out the VTX it's got with this one and then wire it in. I should point out as well, the other thing you'd normally get with this is an HDMI cable. This uses a sort of mini to mini HDMI, which fortunately I already had one in my FatShark case, although I haven't got a huge one, so I have to stand quite close to where I am. So just before we go to close up, I think we should talk about what it can do in terms of resolution and how this may impact you depending on the goggles you've got. So the idea of Bytefrost, as opposed to DJI, which is like a whole ecosystem, here's your goggles, here's a controller, here's a air unit, and go off and do it, I think the idea is it's going to integrate into your existing kit better. However, I think it's fair to say that your existing kit may not be up to the specs of what the thing can do. So the actual resolution this can do is 720p at 60 frames a second, and 720p is 1280 by 720, so that's your widescreen 60 frames a second HD footage. So the problem I found, or I thought about initially, is if we look at goggles, they're typically not up to that resolution. So I use these are my Dominator V3s, quite old, and many people have got better goggles than these, but you know, goggles are expensive and it's really hard to justify the upgrade. So the resolution of these guys, because they're widescreen, is 800 by 480, which is basically standard definition widescreen. even the the Premier FatShark goggles, the HDOs, you're looking at 960 by 720. So that is like almost HD, but it's full free, not 16:9. It needs to be 1280 by 720 to be proper. So it's the same with Dominator HD Freeze at 800 by 600. So the only things that get close to it, the Sky Zone Sky 030s, I think, are 1024 by 768, which is close. The Orca FPV1, which I've never ever seen before, are they actually out? They're 1280 by 960, so they're right. So I'm saying this up front because I'm interested to know if I'm going to see a difference here, because obviously the resolution hasn't gone up that much. It's slightly better than the normal 640 by 480 that you get from SD cameras. So is the digital part of this gonna be better? Is it the fact it's HD, although it's scaled down, gonna be better? But I have got another solution to that. I reviewed these a long time ago. These are the Ishin Goggle 2, perhaps the worst sounding name ever. But inside here, and this is a box goggle type, as you can see, they're pretty huge. There's a proper 1080p LCD panel. So I'll be able to get at least native resolution. That's HDMI input again. So, but anyway, let's go to close up and let's have a closer look at what we're actually getting and what's on that board and stuff. Okay, just for close up, I thought I'd just put this on just to show you how it looked. It's pretty bright. I'm obviously inside at the moment, but yeah, it looks pretty bright from what I can see. And when you turn it on, it does a little scan of channels and obviously doesn't find anything. One thing to note, of course, is you don't get any of the antennas for this. It recommends 2 Omnis, 2 directionals, and an Omni on the VTX. But that's what it looks like. I'll come back to this once we get something set up though. But that's just it with a couple of 18650 batteries in there. Oh no, no on-off switch again. But the things I want to look at in more detail is the main board here. And I thought I'd just compare it to a small VTX standard. Obviously the stack's the same. Yep, the Bytefrost is bigger, but hopefully not outrageously so. I think this will fit on. So this is the camera connection, and what you've got there is a bunch of normal things. There's an OSD, there's a ground, there's a video. You've got these things called A and B. And then over here, these 2 lines, you've got the power, which you'll see is 8 to 28 volts, and the ground, so we need to connect those 2. Down on here, this is a TX-RX. We need to connect this to Betaflight to get some information from it. That needs to go in a UART, and it runs the protocol I can't remember at the moment, the same one as the USB to retrieve information. And finally you get this thing. This is a configuration board. With this, you can set your VTX power, your channel, you can do the camera setup. So yeah, it's a bit like a sort of OSD board, but does more because it has to control the VTX that way. Because this is a single way protocol, it's no good you changing your channel on your receiver without doing something on here, so you have to do it both ways around. So this just plugs into this camera. This is the run cam. So this is an analog HD camera, and you see power, ground, video, that's normal, OSD normal, and then you've got the A and B plugs, which just obviously just connect in like that, and that should hopefully go in a quad very easily. And then we've got an MMCX adapter there. Again, we don't get antennas for this, so it's almost like, yes, you're going into a quad that you already own, sort the rest out yourself. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to find a quad that I can just take my existing VTX out and hopefully just slip this one in, make a couple of little connections there, obviously with a soldering iron, and see where we go from there. So I'll be back in a sec once I've got this, deciding what quad to put it in and how to fit it. This is my Cuppers one, which I've just taken the top off and taken stuff out quickly because I think I can just about fit the Bytefrost in there. This is the existing VTX, which is a lot smaller. Here's the camera, which is a run cam, what is it, Swift Mini, quite an old camera, that one now. And there's one problem here, which is that we've got this buzzer board at the back which isn't going to fit in. But if we take that off, I think essentially with a little bit of moving stuff around and getting things in the right place and doing a little bit of soldering, that will essentially go in there. And because that pushes forwards like that, hopefully we'll be able to put that camera in the same thing and sort of get that in there-ish. I'll see if that fits in first, but that's the idea anyway. But yeah, because this MMCX adapter comes all the way out the back here. Although that would sort of fit in, it wouldn't give any space to put the buzzer back in, but there's no problem as far as space goes on the top at least. Okay, so there we are installed, but nothing's fixed on. Just 4 connections there. Basically, I removed my... what's this? This is the for the original VTX that was in there. So I used power and ground to go for one of it, and I've got TX and RX6, which was controlling smart audio, is now going to be Bytefrost. And then we've just got the camera, not an exact fit, but we've got a couple of spaces there, and that seems to be fine. Can't put the top on because just beforehand I wanted to check, you know, things would turn on and stuff. So let's plug this in and check. No magic smoke, good. We've got a little red light on there, which can't be a bad thing. So I presume I'm close enough to do this right. Any antennas in. Bytefrost. Off looking for things. There we are. Look at that. That's my hand. There's no delays there in the transmission. It's complaining I haven't got an SD card. So I've still got some bits now to do with setting up that TX6 for starters. So I've got nothing on the screen. I need to get an SD card in. I need to look at what this does. So we'll do the Betaflight setup first. We'll put the top on. We'll come back to look at this and what we're going to see on this.
Okay, so here we are in Betaflight. There's not much to do, I just need to change that UART over. So this is a setup quad and it's still running Betaflight 320, and that's because it flies perfectly fine and I've never felt the need to upgrade it. I don't know if I have to upgrade it for this to speak properly to it, but we'll find out. Anyway, I'm using UART 6 and this was set up to use IRC Tramp, so I just need to disable that. And this is going to be the configuration MSP, the same as the USB plug. So if we do that, and then we need to set this to 19200, save and reboot that. And of course I didn't just make that up myself. There are instructions for this, and so this bit for Betaflight setup looks like this. And it says we should be able to get, if you're armed, disarmed, current voltage and the RSSI. So we're looking for the Bytefrost to pick that up via its serial connection and display that somehow on the screen. So we'll have a look and see if that's actually working. Okay, so despite making those changes in Betaflight, when I turned on, yep, I got my display fine, but I wasn't getting any OSD information. And here's my quad, and as you can see, whoops, we've got the right stuff in here. And one thing I was checking for was the version. I was like, is the version of Betaflight weird? And you notice here it just says Kakute F4 320, early version as we said. But I eventually found from this thread on RC Groups from FatShark himself, FC needs to be updated to MSP API 142. Now this doesn't even tell me what the MSP API is. If I connect to a more up-to-date quad, this one's running 406, and if I type version here, I get this handy little thing about the MSP API, which obviously the version of Betaflight 3.2 didn't even bother showing it. It's some version, but we don't know what. So I guess what we do is try upgrading Betaflight on the Kakute board to the latest to see what we get. Okay, just updated, and here's the difference. We have RSSI. I haven't got the radio on. Actually, let's switch it on, see what happens. 28%. That looks a little bit low for what I'd expect, actually. We'll have a look at that. 0 amps, there's our voltage, and there's our on timer. I'll have to pop back into Betaflight, see what's going on with that. It might be a scaling thing since we just upgraded all the way from 3.2 up to 4.1. One scary thing about that is the tuning may be way different. I just had to basically dump it and put it back, so who knows. But we'll find out soon enough. Okay, so the next bit I want to talk about is what the buttons did in this, and I thought I'd show it. This is my sort of test setup. Basically it says there's sort of the right end and the left end, so on each of those ends I've gone with skew planers and directional antennas, but that's just a test setup for now. Haven't got everything matching, but hopefully they shouldn't matter. Anyway, if we turn on. So when you turn on, it does this channel sweep and basically shows you your last channel you're on. So we're on HQ1, and then the channel status. So it does the sweep, looking at the 4 HQ channels and the 6 LQ channels. Now I know HQ and LQ, there's a difference there. HQ is 50 frames a second, LQ is 60, and there's more bandwidth used on HQ, but it doesn't mention anything about the resolution. Is it just a bandwidth thing or what? And over here, although it's pretty small, you can basically see there is a sort of a 4-way control thing. So if we push the button to the left, that is apparently just another channel scan. If we go to the right, which looks like a tick, but it actually takes us to our basically a menu page. If I go to the left, that should give us a setup, and here we've got various setup things. We've got movie quality, and we're in superfine. You've got the option of superfine or fine, so we'll take superfine. There is a password. The recommendation is not to touch this. Now I don't believe this is a two-way protocol. I think perhaps by setting a password on the VTX and VRX, perhaps there's some sort of encryption, so it basically formats the data so it can only be unencrypted by this password. Obviously we won't touch that. There's a format SD card, pretty self-explanatory. HDMI format, this is the format. It comes out of the HDMI socket and goes to your goggles. You can change that between 16:9 and 4:3. It will always record 16:9 here. Record mode auto, this means when it gets a signal that's valid, it will just start recording, and if it loses that signal it would stop recording. You've got this thing called extended channels. This is apparently just for race directors, and that the idea is there are more channels to use. If you switch that to on, we will see we then get 12 HQ channels and 12 LQ channels. I don't think they're necessarily legal channels in all territories, so that's something to be aware of. We've got the reset, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then the about mode does as Bytefrost, the firmware version we're on, and the wireless protocol HD0. This is where it becomes slightly more open. HD0 is its own company, and perhaps other manufacturers might come out with the same thing. Okay, so if we come back out of there, the other things we've got now is if we go downwards, we go to our previously recorded stuff, which has just literally been me sitting about here. We've got 3 pages of this, or have we? I guess that's what it means, yeah, because every time it gets a signal you can see the page numbers here. And if we press to the right, that's the playback situation, and you can do fast forwards, you can do rewind, so quite easy to get through your footage there. That's quite handy. The record will actually make it record, although there's no signal there, so it instantly stops. You see the record indicator come on and go away, and going back up goes back to our scanning. So that's that side of the thing, and I'll just turn on. So as soon as we power on, you'll see we've got our recording indicator there. That's come on, and we can rescan, and we get, you would have seen our HQ stuff there, but there you go. We've also got, if you remember, we've got the channel buttons as well. So if we go through the different channels, you can see at the moment this is HQ1, that is HQ2. Obviously we get no picture there. HQ3, HQ4, LQ1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and back to HQ1, and it goes from standby. It should go straight into recording once it realizes, yep, and we can pretty much just turn stuff off and the recording stuff will be absolutely fine. So let's have a look now at the options we've got on the unit itself. So the control of the VTX comes from this little board we've just plugged in. So making it a bit darker, a quick press there will show it's on channel number 1, and we can go through the channels there. So we've got 4 channels because we're on HQ mode, and that is essentially it. The way to get between LQ and HQ is set on a different menu, but the power setting, if we hold that button down, it will flash, and the 1 is the 25 milliwatts, 2 is 250, 3 is 350. So if we stick on number 1 for now, you see what the little dot, and we should just press that again and hold it,
and we get the little number 8 which says we're in there. So let's talk about the other joystick. This other joystick controls the actual camera itself, and for this we need to bring the bit back in. So if we just press that button down like that, we get your normal sort of looking picture menu, of which we've got pick adjust, and we can flip the camera up and down, brightness, contrast, sharpness, hue, color grain, all that stuff. We've got white balance, different versions of there. We've got environments from outdoor, indoor, and a couple of user settings, language, and camera reset. Don't need to save that. Okay, so the settings on the RunCam camera are different than the manual. It says hold the stick to the right for several seconds, and that will put it into LQ mode, but what you have to do is then reboot the transmitter. So if we do that, let's see what we get. So it says we're in LQ1. This little joystick would tell us we're in LQ1, but we've got no picture on LQ1. Let me try just rebooting this as well. So yeah, I'm not thinking too much of LQ1 at the moment. It actually said in the instructions, first gen issues. You may want to ignore low quality mode for now. I'm going to put it back into high, which should have just happened there. Let me reboot again. So we're back on HQ1. The other thing I forgot to point out, of course, is you've got that little indicator about how good your signal quality for video is. So yeah, LQ doesn't seem to work at the moment, although it kind of says it doesn't look like it works at the moment. So we've got a few tests to do really. I mean, first off, I'm definitely gonna have a look at these camera settings, because when I'm looking at the sort of picture I'm getting indoors, it does look very washed out. Now it could just be an indoors thing, or it could be this camera or how the DVR sort of looks at it, but that definitely looks weird. Of course, the other thing we'll be doing is plugging in different goggles and seeing what that looks like, and I'll have a quick look at that now. Okay, so I'm here with my FatSharks plugged in with the HDMI cable, and I really wanted to see what the picture is like in the goggles, because what I can do is of course show you the DVR footage and record that, but I can't really show you what's going on in my goggles because I can't record directly there, so I have to give you a sort of subjective opinion of what it feels like. So let me plug in a battery. There we go, we're sort of pointing over there towards the wall. So let me see, this looks like, mostly that looks really washed out inside. I do notice that the OSD is very, very clear, that's quite nice. But it doesn't look particularly sharp, doesn't look particularly good. I think that's mainly down to the camera just being, it just looks a little bit blurry really, and the colours don't look right. It's a question of will this 1080p display look any better, really. Well, that has a much more impressive field of view. The colours still look completely off, but the box goggle HD picture is actually very nice. I mean, that's the view, not that you can see it, but yeah, it's more impressive than the goggles, but overall I'm not very impressed with the picture you're getting from that camera. It's not super sharp, and the colours look off at the moment. Now obviously my next thing to do would be to fly this, but we've had a slight fly in the ointment in the fact that the Great British Weather's let us down again. We've had rain most of the last 2 weeks, and when we haven't had rain we've had wind, so today it's a mix of stormy showers and 50-mile-an-hour winds, which means I can't go out and fly this. I'm going to have to wait. But I thought I'd put this video out there at the moment, A, because it's very long and the flying stuff would make it even longer, B, because I wanted to put out my initial thoughts and how the system is comprised of. And my thoughts so far is a bit of a mix of things. I'm liking the fact that I took an existing quad here and I installed it, and it was very easy. There were 4 wires to solder. There was a tiny bit of setup on Betaflight, although I did have to upgrade my version of Betaflight for it to work properly in terms of getting the OSD back. The camera was a nice friendly size and just fitted in. So setup on the quad end, really easy. really quite friendly as far as things go. Now on the receiver end, obviously this is a bit wacky and weird and a bit different. We've got, I mean, it's quite nice to have a screen if you want to show other people, but it's not particularly convenient. So I've got used to just putting my goggles on, having a couple of quads in my backpack and going and flying. It's really nice just to have like a single radio, have a single headset, just have a quad and a bunch of batteries and off you go and fly. When you have to bring along something like this and then a tripod and a cable to tether yourself onto, everything gets a bit more hassle. But we have to understand right now, when you're buying this, you're effectively buying to take part in a beta testing. This is not a finished product by any means, and the development, I think, looks quite early. So as far as I could see, the LQ mode didn't work at all. So there's an issue here in terms of portability, but is it going to make things worthwhile by having an enhanced image in the goggles? I have to say, so far, the image in my goggles I didn't like. And that seems mostly because of the colours. It seemed not quite sharp enough, but mainly the colours seemed very washed out, very sort of dim. There wasn't a good contrast between them all. So when I get outside, and I want to do this outside, not inside, because the light will be completely different, I am going to take that thing and do what I hardly ever do, which is go through those camera settings to see if I can get things looking a bit better. Because at the moment they don't look very good at all, and I think they could really look much better. So one of the other reasons to put the video here now is just in case any questions or suggestions came up about how I should fly this. So my intention would be to take this out, try it on the different power levels, try it in a variety of things, basically going up and down a field with, you know, reasonable couple of 100-meter range, going behind some obstacles, seeing how that goes, and then comparing to something on analog like this NASCAR 5, which I've just installed, actually a new VTX, which would be quite a useful test, just to see how they compare. Because as I mentioned before, in my goggles, in my Dom V3s, I'm not getting an enhanced resolution. I'm getting perhaps a slightly better resolution that's being scaled down. Is that going to look better than a good camera? And on this one we're running the Calyx Ratel, which I really like. Am I going to see that difference in the goggles, which I think is important for people, because if you're sort of stepping up to a system like this instead of going sort of potentially DJI and the whole infrastructure and getting, you know, their own goggles and their own camera and their own unit, it's a completely different situation. So if you've got your own goggles, are you going to see a difference? Is it worth it to get that digital system? Is the digital going to help us? So that is what I'm going to be doing, and as soon as the weather allows it, I will be out flying this, comparing it to that other one, and we'll see what we get, and we'll see how we feel about it. In the meantime, of course, if you've got any suggestions about things I should be doing when I'm flying those, or if you've got any questions about the unit, or you feel I've missed stuff out, pop them down below and I'll see if I can answer them or test them out the best of my ability. Until next time, I hope that was helpful for now. I'm looking forward to flying this, and hope you stick about for that one. And thanks again to Rob for lending it to me to test it out. Hope that was useful, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.